Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome everyone to today's class for the first intermediate grade. Our textbook is Super Goal 2 and today we will cover a new unit called Then and Now. Listen and discuss and pair work. This lesson will be presented by me, teacher Mazra Harbi, and the sign language by Mr. Fawaz Al-Agil. So let's begin. Our objectives in today's lesson, we hope that at the end of this lesson, you will be able to compare between past and present and also search for words indicating specific information. So, before we start and before you open your books, I would like to talk to you about the past, something that happens to the past and about a very special city. You know that Diriyah was the first city or the first Saudi state historical crossroad of pilgrims and traders, and there were many palaces there. And Salwa Palace was the largest palace. So Diriyah was the first Saudi state back then in the past. Not only this, and now I would like you please to open your books on page 56. As I have further questions to ask you. So have a look at this page and tell me how well do you know these cities, the cities that you can see on that page. Have you ever been to one of these cities? And what do you know about them? So these are very important questions that we need to discuss before we read the text. So if you know these cities, what exactly do you know about them? I'm not talking here about people you know in these cities. I'm talking about buildings, I'm talking about streets, I'm talking about public places about these cities. What are the attractions that you can see in those cities? What are the things that will come up in your mind when someone said that I want to visit these cities? So these are a very important things you need to consider, you need to think of when we have a look at these cities. And also, what do you know about them? If you were to be a tour guide for these cities, what is the first thing that you would go to? And what is the first place that you will give advice to someone by using should? You should go there, you should visit that place or that place, and you must not do this or that. So these are very important questions for you to consider about these places. When you think of these places, then we can move now to the text. And now I'm going to read about the text, and as usual, I'm going to read it twice. The first time you only listen, you don't have to do anything. And the second time you listen while you follow with me, and then we can have or underline any difficult words then because we're going to explain them. So here we have Riyadh and Jeddah, then and now. So let's begin reading. The old oasis town of Riyadh was an area of about 1 square kilometers with a population of about 14,000. There were many mud brick houses, mosques, and other buildings inside the walls of the city. Today, most of the buildings and walls of the old city are in ruins. But the Al-Masmak fort and some parts of the walls were restored and are in better condition. Nowadays, Riyadh is home to a population of more than 7 million people and covers an area of more than 1,500 square kilometers. Modern building complexes and skyscrapers like the Kingdom Center, the Al Faisaliya Center, and the Riyadh TV Tower are now attractions of the new city. So now we have finished the first part of our reading. Now we'll move to the second part. Riyadh and Jeddah then and now. Balad, the old part of Jeddah, was a group of 3 to 5 story buildings with beautiful wooden balconies. The roads were narrow to protect the pedestrians from the sun during the hot months and offered shelter from strong winds. All the woodwork was beautifully carved and decorated. There were plazas and souks where vendors from different places showed their products. Present-day Jeddah is an attractive, modern port city with tall buildings, beautiful homes, and wide range of stores and hotels. So now, I'm going to read it again, and this time you try to follow with me while I am reading. So, Riyadh and Jeddah then and now. The old oasis town of Riyadh was an area of about 1 square kilometer with a population of about 14,000. There were many mud brick houses, mosques, and other buildings inside the walls of the city. Today, most of the buildings and walls of the old city are in ruins. But the Al-Masmak fort and some parts of the walls were restored and are in better condition. Nowadays, Riyadh is home to a population of more than 7 million people and covers an area of more than 1,500 square kilometers. Modern building complexes and skyscrapers like the Kingdom Center, the Al Faisaliya Center, and the Riyadh TV Tower are now attractions of the new city. So here in this text, it talks about Riyadh in the past and also Riyadh in the present day. And it says here that Riyadh in the past, it was the oasis town, and the area was only 1 square kilometers. 1 square kilometers, the old Riyadh. And also the population, and this is a very important word, the population, it means the number of people living at that place. The population was about 14,000 only 14,000. So there were many mud brick houses, not concrete. They were very old technique to build houses, and mosques and other buildings inside the walls of the city. So back then there used to be walls, and inside these walls is the city. So today most of the buildings that we can see of the old city are in ruins. It means that they are not in good condition. Only a few houses left from that time. But Al-Masmak Fort, as you can see here, Al-Masmak Fort and parts of its wall is still in better condition. So it's not in ruins, it is in better conditions. And nowadays, today, Riyadh is home to a population of more than 7 million people. So nowadays, Riyadh has more than 7 million people. And back then, they used to have only 14,000. So it covers an area of more than 1,500 square kilometers. And also it has modern building complexes and skyscrapers. Skyscrapers, we mean by this is tall buildings like towers. And Riyadh has different towers. We have, for example, the towers of the Kingdom Center, the Al Faisaliya Center, and also the TV Tower. And they are nowadays considered to be the attractions of the new city, one of the attractions of Riyadh in today's world. So this is a summary about this text and what the information that mentioned in this text. Now let's move on to the second part of this text and read it again, and then we can explain some of the terms that we may face. Riyadh and Jeddah then and now. Balad, the old part of Jeddah, was a group of 3 to 5 story buildings with beautiful wooden balconies. The roads were narrow to protect pedestrians from the sun during the hot months and offered shelter from strong winds. All the woodwork was beautifully carved and decorated. There were plazas and souks where vendors from different places showed their products. Present day, Jeddah is an attractive, modern port city with tall buildings, beautiful homes, and wide range of stores and hotels. So here it talks about another city which called Jeddah. And usually Jeddah, there is an old part of Jeddah called Al-Balad, and it has a group of 3 to 5 story building. It means 3 floors to 5 floors. And also it has a narrow streets, not wide, it is narrow streets. And why? Because they want to protect pedestrians, people who walk on these streets from the sun during the hot months. Not only this, and they offer shelter from strong winds, so winds cannot cannot affect people who walk on these streets. So all the woodwork was beautifully carved and decorated. So you can see here, most of these buildings were made of wooden work. And also there are plazas and souks. Souks means here very old markets. And also different vendors, different people, they show their products. And today Jeddah is different. Today Jeddah is attractive. As we can see here, it has modern buildings and beautiful hotels and stores. So this is about the second paragraph on our lesson today, which is Jeddah. So we have talked about Riyadh, we have talked about Jeddah then in the past and now in the present. Now let's talk about someone who used to live in both cities, Riyadh and Jeddah. So please turn your books on page 57. Turn to page 57. On page 57, we're going to talk about the famous player, Majid Ahmed Abdullah, and see how he linked to both Riyadh and Jeddah. So, Majid Ahmed Abdullah then and now. Majid Ahmed Abdullah is one of the best football strikers in the history of Saudi Arabia. He is also the all-time goal leader of the Saudi national team. He was born in Jeddah but moved to Riyadh with his family when he was very young. Majid's father was a football manager. Majid and his friends used to play for a club called Al-Nasr while he was still in high school. They were too young to join a football tournament, but their team was finally accepted after a 3-1 win in a game against an important Riyadh team. Majid holds 2 national records, one when he scored 5 goals in the international game in 1979 and another one when he scored 4 goals during the 1984 Summer Olympics. So now this is the first reading. Now let's read it again, and this time you try to follow with me as we're going to elicit some information. So, Majid Ahmed Abdullah is one of the best football strikers in the history of Saudi Arabia. He is also the all-time goal leader of the Saudi national team. He was born in Jeddah but moved to Riyadh with his family when he was very young. Majid's father was a football manager. Majid and his friends used to play for a club called Al-Nasr while he was still in high school. They were too young to join a football tournament, but their team was finally accepted after a 3-1 win in a game against an important Riyadh team. Majid holds 2 national records, one when he scored 5 goals in an international game in 1979 and another one when he scored 4 goals during the 1984 Summer Olympics. So in this text it talked about the player, and he was born in Jeddah. This is how we can link between Jeddah and Riyadh. So he was born in Jeddah, and later on he moved to Riyadh. He was raised in Riyadh. So his father was a football manager. So he used to play for a team called Al-Nasr, and also that they were too young to join a football tournament. But after they win 3-1, they got accepted, and he holds two records. It means that he has two achievements. The first one, he scored 5 goals in international game in 1979, and another when he scored 4 goals in the Olympics 1984. Now, here we have listened to two important phrases: was born and was raised. What's the difference between them? When you say I was born, it means that you're talking about the time or place of birth. For example, I was born in Riyadh. It means that I'm talking here about the place. I was born in Riyadh. And you can say also, I was born in January in 2000. So here you are talking about time. So whether you're talking about time or you're talking about place, then you can use I was born in the past. And the other one, I was raised, here you mean that the person grew up in that place. So, for example, I was raised, it means the place that you grew up with, that you went from junior years, 5 years old until now. So what is that place? So to talk about it, you would say, or you would use I was raised in. So Majid Abdullah, he was born in Jeddah, but he was raised in Riyadh. So this is how can we differentiate between them. So where was Majid Ahmed Abdullah born again? Where was Majid born again? As we have mentioned before, very good. He was born in Jeddah. And where was he raised? Where was Majid raised? Excellent. He was raised in Riyadh. He was raised in Riyadh. And now let's move on to the quick check, and let's start with our first exercise. Our first exercise here says mark the information about the buildings, the materials, and the size of each city. So you can go back to this text about Riyadh and Jeddah and just underline the information that talks about the buildings, the materials, and the size. So here I have elicited some for you. When we talk about Riyadh, for example, we would say that there were many mud brick houses back then, and mosques and other buildings. And also we can say it covers an area of more than 1,500 square kilometers. This is the space or the area of Riyadh. And also in terms of building, we can say modern building complexes and skyscrapers. So Riyadh has modern skyscrapers and also building complexes. So what about Jeddah? Jeddah is also, the old part of Jeddah was a group of 3 to 5 story buildings with wooden balconies. So this is to talk about buildings, and the materials usually to be from wood. And also modern port city, now Jeddah became a modern port city with tall buildings, beautiful homes, and wide range of stores and hotels. So here we have talked about, from the text, we have elicited the sentences and the information that talk about the buildings, the size, and the materials of both Jeddah and Riyadh. And now here we have a comprehension questions, yes or no questions. So let's start with the first one. When we read the first one, we can decide or whether we agree with the sentence. We would say yes. If we don't, we say no according to the text. So number one says, the walls of the old city of Riyadh were made of concrete. Were made of concrete. Do you agree with this? Of course, the answer is no. So what was it made of? Very good, it was made of mud bricks. And number two, most of the buildings in Balad had 2 stories, or it means 2 floors. What do you think of this? Of course, the answer is no. So how many stories were there in those buildings? Excellent. They were 3 to 5 stories. And number 3, more than 7 million people live in Riyadh. More than 7 million people live in Riyadh. Do you agree with this? Yes, of course. The answer is yes. And number 4, Al-Masmak, the Al-Masmak fort is in ruins. The Al-Masmak fort is in ruins. Is this true? Of course, the answer is no, because it is in better condition. And finally, Majid was a member of the Saudi national team, and the answer is yes, of course. And now here we have the pair work. What we need to do here, just to ask about the cities and Majid, you can ask it with friends of yours. And also here to ask and answer about cities, for example, when you say where Majid were born and was he born in that city, or where were you born in that city or their city, so you can have different discussion about this. Before we finish, don't forget to check on the workbook on page 115 for practice with was and where. And now we have reached the end of our lesson. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.